This isn't just another story about a surfer, their upbringing, and so-called creativity. This is the story of Dion Agius, who started Dion TV in 2010 and is often overlooked as a founding father of the surf blog.
I guess it probably started when I was about 17 years old, and I actually did a trip to Vietnam with Steele for one of the old movies he was doing. And I was telling him about this concept that I had because he was doing those drive-through movies at the same time. And I thought how cool it would be if you kind of took that and adapted it for online and did this little like shorter versions. So I went back, pitched it to Globe, and they were super into it, and so they kind of gave me the freedom to go out and do that, which was amazing because we didn't know what the fuck we were doing, and Joe kind of gave us parameters of how we should do it, and he literally handed me a handy cam and just said, there you go. And in the initial stages it was just me, and then I would just pick up friends or whoever was on the road at that time and like get footage from them and scratch these things together or send it to Joe, and he would like edit them. And it wasn't something that I thought would become as popular as it did or kind of be something that was entirely different. It just wasn't really happening at the time, and it just seemed like something fun to do, so I kind of started like that. I think where I grew up in Tasmania was probably a big part of that, and also my father was a pretty successful businessman my whole time growing up, and he had his own company, so I kind of grew up around that, him being his own boss, and guess I kind of must have seen the freedom and stuff that came with that, or just he was always working really hard for our family, so that obviously kind of had an influence on me as a kid. But I think just growing up in Tasmania and being in the middle of fucking nowhere and wanting to kind of break out of that, and I wanted to be a pro surfer so bad because that's all I watched and cared about as a kid, and I think my drive has always come from growing up in Tasmania and just being so removed.
I've seen you looking through wide open windows. Everyone knows you can see. Move through a window that's closed. Under your gaze, everything's changing.
Although handy on a surfboard, Dion is the first to admit that his career wouldn't have survived on skill alone. It's his hustle and extracurricular activities that have made him one of the most influential of our generation.
I keep hearing a lot about the big brands failing, and maybe a lot of those brands kind of lost touch with the actual core group of surfers. I think it just shifted from being a surf brand to being a mass market thing where surfers couldn't identify it, whether they were a 40-year-old dude or and now a 12-year-old kid coming up. But I had a really romantic view of having a company, and it was all based around getting to make sunglasses that we wanted to wear, and that just seemed easy, cool, our friends are going to want them, and that just seemed like that was simple. But it's not. It's a million spreadsheets, budgets, money, shit, this, that, and the other, and I just had never really come from a business background or knew how intense it was, and so starting to learn all the business side of things has been a real eye-opener and like a shitload of work. Basically I have an iPod that I travel with because I travel with music and stuff like that, and then I have a burner phone that's just so I can make calls and texts. It's kind of making my life more complicated, but the connectivity to emails and all this shit, it was just becoming too much, and I just felt like I couldn't go 5 minutes without looking at my phone. I'm just trying to simplify my life a little bit, I think. I think it's just more of the interaction thing and personal interactions and everything, I think, for me, is helping because I'm just not distracted.
Two corners turned with me and my memory back. Friends tangled, guilt collected.
Dion's latest film, The Smiling Bag, is an antidepressive entanglement of low fidelity, high energy, and psychedelia. In a society transfixed on instant gratification, Dion's stance against the status quo is internet rebellion.
Smiling Bag came about because I'd done a bunch of trips over the last 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years, filming for other projects, stuff, cluster globe film, like other bits and pieces we were doing. And there's a lot of trips that don't make the cut to a lot of those movies. There's a lot of stuff that you don't see that goes on behind the scenes, the amount of time, the amount of trips we do for that stuff, and 2 minutes gets used. So I ended up with hours and hours and hours of all this footage that was just such a bummer to see it go to waste. And so I started cutting all that stuff together just as a fun side project. And the more I started putting it together, the more I realized there was actually a bit of stuff there. And I didn't want to release it online though as this big thing, and I've done it for 10 years where I just put shit up online and it just loses any physicality or any meaning. And so I then came up with this idea to tour it around because I thought it would be really fun to just get people together and show a little film, and I'd never really done that before. On the internet side, I just gave out my email, and so I've had people emailing me from all over the world and telling me the story about where they live and what they're doing, and just felt nicer that way.